Welcome to iLit Lesson D2.37. Today we will focus on context and academic vocabulary, sequencing events, making predictions, and then applying what you have learned. Do you know what accompanied means? Think about your comfortability with the word accompanied. Accompanied. Jamie accompanied his best friend Eduardo on the boating trip. Synonyms for accompanied: escorted, chaperoned, attended. Which of the following is an example of someone who is accompanied? A grandmother taking a walk with her grandson, a store clerk who is stocking shelves, a police officer who is driving a car. If you said A, a grandmother taking a walk with her grandson, you would be correct. How well do you know the word detect? Detect. A smoke detector should be able to detect smoke immediately to warn people about a fire. Which of the following is an antonym for detect? Notice, watch, miss. If you said miss, you would be correct. Acquired. Came to have, got as one's own. I acquired the money for college by working summers. Examined. Looked closely and carefully. The doctor examined his patient. Exchanged. Give and take. Things of the same kind. The friends exchanged emails over the summer. Thoroughly. Doing all that should be done, very carefully. I checked my work thoroughly before handing it in. When we meet tomorrow, we'll be discussing these questions. Think about them in the meantime. What are your thoughts on whether we acquire too many possessions? Why is it a good idea to examine something before buying it? What are some good ideas for homemade gifts to exchange with a friend? Why is it important to brush your teeth thoroughly? Today we will be looking at an excerpt of The Circuit. This novel is very close to being an autobiography. The author has written 3 books that follow this character from adolescence to high school that very closely mirror the author's experiences growing up. Throughout this story, you're going to be making predictions. Please remember that a prediction is an educated guess about what will happen later in the text. After you make predictions, we'll be reading on and reviewing what your prediction was, and you can modify them to fit any new details that you've learned. Making, reviewing, and modifying predictions can really help you stay interested in the story. Even if you make a prediction that turns out to be wrong, that's okay. It doesn't mean it was a bad prediction. It just means that we need more information to make a better prediction. What if you had to move every time your parents got a new job? And what if that happened several times a year? In this excerpt from the story The Circuit, Francisco Jimenez gives readers an idea of what it's like to be a kid on the labor circuit. It was that time of year again. Ito, the strawberry sharecropper, did not smile. It was natural. The peak of strawberry season was over, and in the last few days, the workers, most of them braceros, were not picking as many boxes as they had during June and July. As the last days of August disappeared, so did the number of braceros. Sunday, only one, the best picker, came to work. I liked him. Sometimes we talked during our half-hour lunch break. That is how I found out he was from Jalisco, the same state in Mexico my family was from. That Sunday was the last time I saw him. When the sun had tired and sunk behind the mountains, Ito signaled to us that it was time to go home. Ya es hora, he yelled in his broken Spanish. Those were the words I waited for 12 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week after week. And the thought of not hearing them again saddened me. As we drove home, Papa did not say a word. With both hands on the wheel, he stared at the dirt road. My older brother, Roberto, was silent. He leaned his head back and closed his eyes. Once in a while, he cleared his throat from the dust that blew from outside. Please pause here and look at the pink vocabulary words to help you. This story is very close to the true life experience of the author. Even though we won't be reading the entire novel, what do you predict will happen to the narrator? After working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for weeks, why is the narrator of the story saddened when it's time to quit? Also, where does the story take place and why is that important? Yes, it was that time of year. When I opened the front door to the shack, I stopped. Everything we owned was neatly packed in cardboard boxes. Suddenly, I felt even more the weight of hours, days, weeks, and months of work. I sat down on a box. The thought of having to move to Fresco and knowing that what was in store for me there brought tears to my eyes. That night I could not sleep. I lay in bed thinking about how much I hated this move. A little before 5 o'clock in the morning, Papa woke everyone up. A few minutes later, the yelling and screaming of my little brothers and sisters, for whom the move was a great adventure, broke the silence of dawn. Soon after, the barking of the dogs accompanied them. Pause here to read through the captions, both on the side and in the middle of the page. The narrator says that he doesn't want to move because he knew what was in store for me. What do you predict the narrator is talking about? I also noticed one of our vocabulary words, accompanied. What context clues lead you to understand the meaning of the word? Why do you think the narrator hates moving so much? While we packed the breakfast dishes, Papa went outside to start the carcachita. That was the name Papa gave his old black Plymouth. He had bought it in the used car lot in Santa Rosa. Papa was very proud of his little jalopy. He had a right to be proud of it. He had spent a lot of time looking at other cars before buying this one. When he finally chose the carcharita, he checked it out thoroughly before driving it out of the car lot. He examined every inch of the car. He listened to the motor, tilting his head from side to side like a parrot, trying to detect any noises that spelled car trouble. After being satisfied with the looks and the sound of the car, Papa had insisted on knowing who the original owner was. He never did find out from the car salesman, but he bought the car anyway. Papa figured the original owner must have been an important man because behind the rear seat of the car he found a blue necktie. Papa parked the car out in front and left the motor running. "Listo!" he yelled. Without saying a word, Roberto and I began to carry the boxes out of the car. Roberto carried the 2 big boxes and I carried the 2 smaller ones. Papa then threw the mattress on top of the car roof and tied it with ropes to the front and rear bumpers. Please pause here to review what the words mean in pink. I noticed another vocabulary word here that's not in pink. The word was detect from today. What context clues on this page are the clues to the word's meaning? Everything was packed except Mama's pot. It was an old, large, galvanized pot she had picked up in an army surplus store in Santa Maria. The pot had many dents and nicks, and the more dents and nicks it acquired, the more Mama liked it. "My olla," she used to say proudly. I held the front door open as Mama carefully carried out her pot by both handles, making sure not to spill the cooked beans. When she got in the car, Papa reached out to help her with it. Roberto opened the rear car door and Papa gently placed it on the floor behind the front seat. Then all of us climbed in. Papa sighed, wiped the sweat from his forehead with his sleeve, and said warily, "Es todo." As we drove away, I felt a lump in my throat. I turned around and looked at our little shack for the last time. Pause here to read the sidebar and caption. Let's pause and think. The narrator has a lump in his throat as they drive away from their shack. How does this illustration help you visualize what the shack was like? Also, it's pretty important that the narrator calls the place they live in a shack. Why do you think he doesn't call it a home? At sunset, we drove into the labor camp near Fresno. Since Papa did not speak English, Mama asked the camp foreman if he needed any more workers. "We don't need no more," said the foreman, scratching his head. "Check with Sullivan down the road. Can't miss him. He lives in a big white house with a fence around it." When we got there, Mama walked up to the house. She went through the white gate, past the row of rose bushes, up the stairs to the house. She rang the doorbell. The porch light went on, and a tall, husky man came out. They exchanged a few words. After the man went in, Mama clasped her hands and hurried back to the car. "We have work! Mr. Sullivan said we can stay there for the whole season," she said, gasping and pointing to the old garage near the stables. Pause here to read our words in pink and the sidebar. Think about, why do you think that the mother can speak English and the father cannot? Are you able to summarize what we have read so far in the circuit? I look forward to discussing these during our classroom conversation tomorrow. Please move on to iLit assignments. Today you're doing Sequence of Events and Phonics Reader Thursday Storm. The assignment in Quizlet is D2.37. Hey, our classroom conversation is tomorrow. We're going to be discussing the circuit along with doing a Quizlet live practice. I look forward to seeing you then.